Has the negative intensity of the two warring political parties caused a man with mental health issues to attempt a mass assassination of lawmakers?
You are now listening to The Spearsy Spin with your host, Mike Spears.
Hi folks, and welcome to The Spearsy Spin. Tonight, was House Majority Whip Steve Scalise the apparent target in Wednesday's shooting spree in Alexandria, Virginia, or was he just there? We'll talk about this in depth, but first, the London fire. Now, as you know, a horrible fire has taken at least 12 lives as it's burned its way through a 24-story West London apartment building. The fire apparently started early Wednesday, with the death toll now already at 12, and sadly expected to climb as there's more than 70 people injured. The cause of this fire is still under investigation. Of course, the question on everyone's mind is, well, how did the fire start? The fire at the Grenfell Tower in North Kensington was first reported at 12:54 a.m., and the tower was built in 1974, and it was home to 400 people in 120 apartments. Now, the firefighters responded within 6 minutes, and that's according to the London Fire Brigade. It's believed that the blaze began on the second floor and then spread quickly up to the top. Again, many are wondering, how did it spread so quickly? Well, investigators at this time are looking into all possibilities. However, it will be much later when a cause is listed. Now, as a rule, newer high-rise apartment buildings are designed to contain the fire in its place of origin. Grenfell Tower was recently fitted with exterior aluminum cladding. It's not coming into question right now as to whether or not the cladding had a role in the fire. However, this type of cladding, which often consists of aluminum sheets over insulation, has been a factor in fires in the past. Right now, we're keeping the folks there in London in our prayers. Well, we have to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll talk about the Trump-hating gunman.
Today, the mainstream media gets their facts wrong. Those leaning far left aren't happy with the status quo. Americans have never seen this much disinformation being disseminated. Watch the news, then listen to The Spearsy Spin with political commentator Mike Spears. The Spearsy Spin, now on Google, Twitter, Facebook, thespearsyspin.blogspot.com, and YouTube. Many listeners refer to Mike Spears as the new Walter Cronkite.
Well, by now, many of you have heard bits and pieces about the crazed gunman from Illinois that shot several people at Simpson Field in Alexandria, Virginia, Wednesday. Now, the shooter appears to be a Trump-hating building inspector from Illinois named James Hodgkinson. He's 66, of Belleville, Illinois. Now, Mr. Hodgkinson opened fire on a congressional baseball practice that was Wednesday morning, and he seriously wounded a Republican lawmaker and 4 others. It's been widely suspected that James Hodgkinson was a Bernie Sanders supporter who hated President Trump. According to his Facebook page, it seems rather obvious that, well, this crazed gunman hated Republicans as much as he did Trump. During the ensuing firefight between Mr. Hodgkinson and the police, he was gunned down by one of the Capitol police officers. For whatever reason, it appears as though Mr. Hodgkinson maintained 2 Facebook pages, each loaded with profane anti-Trump posts. Now, it's also believed that Hodgkinson had been a volunteer with the failed Sanders presidential campaign. Earlier today, Bernie Sanders called the shooting a despicable act. Injured in the melee was House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, Texas Representative Roger Williams, congressional aide Zach Barth, Tyson Foods Director of Government Relations Matt Micah, and 2 Capitol Police officers. Again, Hodgkinson was shot by the Capitol Police and did die later at the hospital. A number of anti-Trump Facebook posts have been taken down as of late Wednesday by Facebook administrators. One said Trump is guilty and should go to prison for treason. Another said, Make America great again, resign. Now, Hodgkinson posted an editorial cartoon on the Facebook page showing Scalise behind a podium addressing a group of hooded Ku Klux Klansmen. Hodgkinson wrote in the post, "Here's a Republic that should lose his job, but they gave him a raise." Now, meanwhile, at Fox News, they are now confirming that Hodgkinson sent politically charged letters to the Belleville News Democrat, which published a few of them. Hodgkinson wrote in 2011, "It's time for the Republican congressmen to grow up. Maybe if they weren't so full of hate, they could see what they're doing to the country. Selling it to the Chinese just so they can keep more of the millions." In the meantime, Hodgkinson's brother had an opportunity to talk to the New York Times, and his brother was not pleased with the current political climate and said that his brother took that much more seriously. Quote, "I know he wasn't happy with the way things were going, the election results and stuff," said Michael Hodgkinson while talking with the New York Times. Today's shooter was a member of the American Society of Home Inspectors, and apparently for some reason he dropped out in 2015. Now, Hodgkinson also owned a home inspection business, but for some reason didn't renew his license in 2016. So what is the issue causing this hatred to become a catalyst for lethal recourse? Well, here are some things to consider. For 8 years, we had in place a passive president and administration. Now, this is not an attack on President Obama. Rather, it's a clarity statement to justify what I'm going to say next. If you are not from a military family, nor you've never served in the armed forces, imagine going from high school, or maybe even 2 years at college, directly into the United States Marine Corps at Camp Lejeune. Well, that would be a really sobering and life-changing experience, I'll bet you. And believe it or not, most of the folks can cut the service. Some have to step back, and a select few will have to be medically discharged because of the mental instabilities to cope with the Marine Corps program. So, let's look at Mr. Hodgkinson for a moment. He appears to be, at least during the 8 years during the Obama administration and for the time before President Obama took office, mostly mentally stable. Now enter January 20th, 2017, and President Donald Trump. A, he's a Republican. B, he's a billionaire. And C, he does not coddle people, and his disposition would certainly preclude this. Result, Mr. Hodgkinson feels threatened, disenfranchised, and mentally he alludes to a preconceived belief that Donald Trump and the Republicans are ruining the country. Result, he subconsciously has concluded that we, or at least he, is at war. From this point, I would suggest that Mr. Hodgkinson suffered what we call in the business a narcissistic injury. Narcissistic injury is when a narcissist has a reaction to a threat, whether real or perceived, and feels it's an attack against his or her self-esteem. Result, a triggered narcissistic rage that usually is kept under control to a degree by the individual, and usually only verbal attacks or light physical transgressions take place, as the evidence to date demonstrates.
almost 40 children die of heat stroke after being forgotten in a vehicle. In 70-degree weather, it takes only minutes for the inside of a car to heat up like an oven. At 104 degrees, heat stroke begins, followed by loss of consciousness.
Yeah. Should go an hour and a half or so.
Leave without your child. Live without them forever. Look before you lock. Brought to you by Kids in Cars.
Tell your friends and neighbors about the Spearsy Spin.
However, excuse me, in reviewing some writings of Mr. Hodgkinson over the years, and perhaps we could call them manifestos, if you will, there appears to be an illicit conspiratorial concept that he perpetuated. Next, add in his arrest records and a new reality of who Mr. Hodgkinson truly was as his life began to change and evolve. He harbored a great deal of anger toward the status quo, and while he languished quietly in self-loathing because of his feelings of inadequacy and his inability to correct those wrongs that he believed to be unjust. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to enter the neurotic ideology. Now, this is not as dicey as it sounds because many people today suffer from some degree of some slight mental anomalies. Now, most usually these are caused by an organic issue, but a neurosis tends to be kind of more relevant when multiple stresses are involved. The ideology here then becomes the construct as to how one handles life under the neurotic issue. However, in this case, I would submit that over the years, Mr. Hodgkinson's neurosis became more and much more and greater, actually, to the degree that it became a psychotic hatred. Now, if we're talking about a forensic standpoint, if we look at Mr. Hodgkinson's last 2 years, I suspect that you'll find the following to be true. A. Mr. Hodgkinson's disregard for the status quo and his strong dislike of questionable authoritative powers held over him, that is, the rule of law, became the catalyst for his original neurotic beliefs. Now, we add in his personality traits described by those around him, those he worked with, and so on, and we find that he was hiding in plain sight the fact that he believed that certain wrongs must be righted. Now, we see the personality change where his 60-plus years of being himself has now become the pseudo-personality, and the new personality would be the narcissistic side of him, and that has become, or did become, personified. So we now have a person who has developed from a person filled with despair to a person of neurotic thoughts and idealisms that now have manifested itself into exact psychotic hatreds, now managed and controlled by an individual that's filled with narcissistic rage. Result? A gunman whose rampage on a Virginia baseball diamond Wednesday left a congressman in critical condition and 3 others shot. Now, note that I did not identify the shooter as a left wing, a right wing, no wing, bi wing, any wing. Why? Because that does not matter. Here's why. Now, I know already a ton of you are out there listening and saying, "Oh, I say, good show, old man. You've wrapped all this up in a very neat, understandable, psychoanalytical narrative. Bravo! Your life lessons in psychological everyday drama are endlessly entertaining, old man." Well, Probably not with an English accent, though. But here's why I took the time to break all this down. It's very, very hard to get the general public as a whole to think outside preconceived narratives. For instance, in a room full of people, if I yelled, "Damn liberals!" here is the result. Some of the folks will reply with, "Yeah, damn liberals." In the same exact set of circumstances, if I were to yell, "Damn conservatives!" a select few would recite, "Yeah, damn conservatives." What's my point? Just this. We are not alone. When you're at the store, a movie, a social gathering, a business luncheon, a business meeting, a celebratory event for New Year's Eve, and now even at your church or synagogue, you are not alone. In these public settings, look to your left. Now look to your right. He is there with you. Well, who is there? Well, that would be Mr. Hodgkinson, of course. He is there, trying to maintain a stable mental posture and trying to continue as the person from next door. You see, Mr. Hodgkinson is actually many people. He's left-leaning, right-leaning, Democrat, and Republican. He's white, black, Mexican, Irish, Indian, Middle Eastern, and he is others as well. Now, he's in my neighborhood, and he's in your neighborhood. He lives in the United States, Canada, the UK, and yes, the Middle East. Now, for the most part, our Mr. Hodgkinson lives out his life as best he can. And without increased stimulus, he maintains a comfortable posture. But when Mr. Hodgkinson becomes inundated with extreme and perverse stimulus, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and for 12 months a year, Mr. Hodgkinson takes on the above described mental afflictions and ultimately will act out as we seen at the Virginia Baseball Diamond Wednesday that left the Congressman in critical condition and 3 others shot. Now, I've been talking about this stuff for over 30 years, but the choice is yours, as it is mine. And here it is. We can either stop the hatred in America, okay, get rid of all this anti-left, anti-right, anti-whatever rhetoric on both sides, and agree that we have to live in peace, or we continue as is, and all the above will play out time and time again. Now, I, for one, would choose not to become a statistic from the very narrative I just described. Remember, we're all living on one planet. Either we all get along, or each day some of us will die because of negative stimulus, which is further powered by mental incapacities. So that's our show. We'd like to know what you think. As always, please visit us at thespearsyspin.blogspot.com and let us know what you think. So we now will see everybody on Monday. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to y'all on Monday.